Greetings from the set of Metro and More at Metropolitan Community College, serving more than 50,000 students with over 120 programs at our 8 locations in the daytime, evening, weekends, or online. And I'm your host, Kent Pavelka. Welcome again to Metro and More. More of what you need to know about Metropolitan Community College. It's always a highlight to do this show. We do it quarterly, the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce update. This is, we're going to be talking about the first quarter of 2017 with David Brown, the President and CEO of the Greater Omaha Chamber. Another 3 months history flashed by just like that.
Another one in the books.
Another one in the books. So we're talking about the first 3 months of 2017. Before we get into the specifics, and there are a lot of highlights to talk about, the year as a whole so far from your perspective.
Yeah, it's been a really busy year. Of course, the first 3 months means the legislature's in session, so we spend a lot of time on public policy. And in this particular time frame, we've also had a lot of local political issues happening with the school board, superintendent search, mayor's race. You know, there was a lot of different things going on that made this year particularly busy in that first quarter, plus all the economic development stuff that we'll talk about here in a second. But, you know, I think we would like to have seen more progress on some things in the legislature. We always seem to have a challenge when there's budget challenges at the state level, and then us trying to figure out a way to reduce taxes or improve incentives. Those are just things that kind of like oil and water, they just don't mix well. Marry that with the local political stuff, and it's just been a really busy first quarter, I think.
How much do those roadblocks and unexpected kinds of things you deal with get in the way of what you'd really like to do, and that is just build the numbers and the positive stuff?
Oh, you know, I think it does get in the way. It slows momentum. When you have companies that are trying to decide about, you know, multi-million-dollar investments or lots of jobs to be created, you know, they worry about political stability. And so if they see an environment where things don't appear stable, even if it's at a local level, the school board as an example, you know, a school board that is not functioning well, that seems to focus on things other than education, irrespective of the community that you're in, that's going to be a red flag to companies wondering, is this a place that has an environment that we can be comfortable in? Now, don't get me wrong, companies understand that every community in the country has moments when, you know, there are political challenges that face businesses, but when it's coupled with a mayor's race that can always get challenging, or a legislative environment that was as fractured and contentious as, it's a really good word. It was as contentious as we've seen in a long time. Those things do slow projects down. They do cause companies to think, you know what, maybe there's greener pastures somewhere else, or I'm not going to have to worry about this. And particularly if companies have an expectation that you're going to be making this a more competitive place for companies to locate and to operate. And those things are what's causing some of the contentiousness. That does slow things down. So the good news is we've had a lot of really good stuff going on. I think what gets slowed down is building a backlog. So you always want to have a lot of companies lined up to be landing once you announce the existing projects you're working on, right? So, you know, we're in the process now. How do you build backlog, and how do you do that in a relatively contentious environment? So it slows things down.
I'm sitting here chuckling because it reminds me of the reality in business and capitalism. When you're in sales, all of this is you know, you've got front end, back end issues, right? Yeah. And a lot of times you just like to sell the stuff, and then people come to you with the problems as a result of what you've sold, right. And you've got to deal with them, and that takes time.
It does take time. And it takes time, not just the stuff I do, but, you know, we've got close to 70 staff now that are all charged with helping us accomplish this mission of really being the champion for growing this regional economy and for thriving businesses. And we try and do that through leadership and collaboration. I mean leadership because we can convene people because of the successes that we've had, and collaboration because we have to count on a lot of other people to get the job done, because in many cases we don't have the authority to do things. You know, government can change laws, government can fix
Get in the way.
taxes. Government needs to remove red tape. We can ask them to, but ultimately they've got to do it. And so our job is not as straightforward as saying, I'm going to produce widget A, sell it to customer B, and take the profit on that equals C. That just isn't that simple. So we've got an awful lot of moving parts, 1,000 different volunteers. Last year alone, we had 65 different organizations outside of the chamber that we partnered with, 60 committees in-house that we use to get things done. I mean, it is a strange machine, if you will, that we are driving to try and move this region in a direction of more prosperity. And so it works. Sometimes it's not pretty, but I think we're doing it better than a lot of other places. There are just moments, particularly when the legislature's in session and it's a challenging legislative session, that the job just gets harder.
Yeah, trying to move a big old battleship around in
a pond.
In a pond. I'm going to throw this at you because it's just. Do you see the day in this state where some of the obvious things that are getting in the way of the kind of environment that would be better will go away, such as, and I know that you guys are interested in income tax versus property tax, but for example, retirees, fixed income, property tax. It's a reality. Sure. People are leaving town to live elsewhere because of that, and we've heard this for 50 years. Yeah. Is it ever going to change in this state?
I of course I'm an optimist, and I always believe things can get better. I think we have a challenge in the state, in that we have multiple visions for what the state should be. And so, if you talk to a rancher, let's say in western Nebraska, and ask him or her what their future can look like. And what they would have to do to accomplish that future, their steps forward are far different than if you ask somebody in Omaha who says, what can this place be like, and what do we have to accomplish to get it done? Those two things are diametrically different from each other. They might even be diametrically opposed visions. To do what needs to be done here and here might just right now be something that they cannot both be accomplished with the means that we have available. And so I think a lot of it is about what do we think this state can be. I mean, frankly, we believe that Omaha cannot be as successful as we'd like it to be if the rest of the state isn't also successful. I mean, if Hastings isn't growing and Scottsbluff isn't growing and the community in the 93 counties in the state, if everyone isn't for the most part prospering and seeing a way to that prosperity, we don't think Omaha can be successful. On the other hand, if Omaha is not successful, I guarantee you that the rest of the counties in the state will not be successful. I mean, we and Lincoln really are the economic driver. 70% of the economy comes from us. 30% of the economy, which is important, the ag economy is an important part for all of us in the state, but we've got to have both of them be successful. So that's a long-winded answer to, I think it can happen, but it's going to come to a point where we've got to have kind of a common vision for what the state can be. And I think, frankly, we're working on a project right now with some partners to say, let's craft that statewide vision that includes how to grow urban Nebraska, suburban Nebraska, rural Nebraska. How do we grow all of those parts of our state?
We don't know the answers to that yet?
No, I don't think we do. I think I can look at our own strategy and say, I know what it's going to take to grow this part of urban Nebraska. Our strategy is different than Lincoln's strategy for growing Lincoln, Nebraska. And though our strategies are different than Columbus and Scottsbluff and Hastings and Kearney and all those folks. And then I don't really believe that there is a strategy for growing the more rural parts of our state. It's almost left up to the individual communities and counties to figure it out for themselves. And that, frankly, is not only not effective, but it isn't fair. I mean, we have far more resources to do that kind of planning and effort than any of the small towns might have. And they need to have the support of not only communities like us, but across the state to make that happen. So if we really want to see Nebraska be more than it is and be what it can be, we've got to start thinking about what is it holistically. How do we get to that point? How do we start recognizing each other's strengths and weaknesses, support each other? And then the debate about property taxes versus income taxes versus sales taxes versus transportation funding versus education funding versus Medicare versus military pensions, who knows what the list goes on and on. Mm-hmm. All those things become part of the strategy then. And we all understand then where we have to give and where things have to go. Right now we're all looking in our little silos And as much as we like to think that a regional economic development program isn't siloed, it is. It's 8 counties.
Sure.
Right? And so there's 85 other counties out there that are wondering what they're going to do to maybe counterbalance what we're trying to get done, or certainly to try and be as successful as we've been. So I think it's going to take a lot more communication, a lot more leadership, from not just the business community, but from our elected leadership.
Right.
I think it's going to take a lot more relationship building. Here's a really interesting point for you. We've been doing this now for 10 years,
yeah.
at least, right? Maybe 12 years. And in that time, we've talked a lot about how do we engage the legislature and business and the communities at large and citizens to come to some kind of an understanding about what's going on. So we go to the legislature, and every year we sit here and we talk about our legislative agenda, right? We talked about, 10 years ago, we talked about Nebraska Advantage Act, having to replace LB 775. Back then, every single senator who was in place knew what 775 was.
Talking term limits of problems, right?
Well, it is a problem, but it's a problem that we haven't managed very well. So
gotcha.
Today, there is only one senator in the body that was around when we passed the Nebraska Advantage Act. He was also around when we passed LB 775, Senator Chambers. He's been there longer than anybody.
I was going to say, is Terry Carpenter still in the Senate? you asked somebody about Terry Carpenter sometime.
Yeah,
he
I
was
don't
around
know
forever.
Terry.
Yeah.
But that means that we have made a gross assumption that when we go and sit in front of the Revenue Committee and we say, don't forget 775, Nebraska Advantage Act, here's the incentives that we have, and here's some tweaking we need to do and why, that there's a common understanding of why we're even in that conversation about incentives.
And there is not.
That's a gross assumption on our part, and there clearly is no common understanding about it. So when you hear a senator, which they did in this legislative session, stand up and say, every dollar that is going into incentives could be used to fund schools. You wonder, well, boy, we've done a lousy job of informing people that for $140 million of incentives a year, we're generating billions in capital investment and thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs. They don't see the correlation. They just see it as an expense. And if they're going to start seeing those things as an expense, they're going to start seeing every tax credit that we use to redevelop downtown Omaha or downtown Lincoln as an expense. Yep. They're going to see every tax credit that's given to an investor to invest in a startup with an angel investment tax credit as an expense. They're not seeing any of that as an investment.
Yep.
Shame on us for maybe not being aggressive enough on the communication side, but certainly shame on us for not realizing that we've got this basically a blank sheet of paper. When you sit in front of a senator and say, here's why we think this is important, they don't have any basis for comparing the information you give them against any experience. And so they're just assuming that we're trying to sell them something. So we've got to do a much better job of, in this environment of term limits, which clearly is different than the days when we first got here, and Speaker Brashear, had been in the legislature for 20 years, and he knew how things happened and why they happened and had a history. None of these guys have that.
Yep.
None of these men and women can have that because they're just not around long enough. So we've got a lot of work to do, I think, to build a common plan for the state and a common understanding of which pieces of our economic pie, if you will, need to be modified in order to be successful in the future. So we got a lot of work ahead of us. I think we've kind of known that we need to do a better job of selling, but it is far more than selling. It is really building a base of knowledge that we have to do every year because there's 17 new senators this year.
Yep.
There were 18 the year before that. I mean, this is crazy that you're technically a third of the body every year is brand new.
Term limits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Terry Carpenter, by the way, kind of was the predecessor to both Senator Chambers and Senator Brashear.
Oh,
he was
okay.
around forever.
Oh, was he?
So
Okay.
I want to ask you my follow-up, which is this going to happen in my lifetime or your lifetime? Because
Absolutely it is.
it is. Okay.
Absolutely.
Good answer. We want to talk about some of the highlights that happened here in the first 3 months of the year. First of all, Facebook is here. How about that?
Yeah, Facebook is a 5 years overnight success. We started working with them a long time ago, and the newspaper did a nice job of kind of dramatizing the number of swings we had at a Facebook kind of data center. So they've announced they're building $1 billion data center here, which means they're going to build a 1 million square foot building, fill it full of computers, so that when you open up your phone, I know you're a Facebook aficionado, and you hit your Facebook icon, and it comes up in less than half a second with your customized page on it, that you can know that that data center is making that happen. Because they told us, if it's more than half a second, you think there's something wrong with your phone. So they position data centers in population centers where they can make sure that the lag time between when you hit your icon and your customized, everyone's customized, your customized Facebook page comes up, that it takes less than half a second.
This is a geographic thing for
It
them.
is.
Yeah.
So it's fiber in the ground, it's bandwidth of that fiber, it's then there's things to support the electricity necessary to build these facilities, the people, all that stuff. And so they geographically position these things so that they can make sure that they can accomplish what you expect them to do as a customer, and that is deliver a custom Facebook page every time you hit that icon within less than half a second.
And then it should improve all of that to users here in the area, because this is one of only 9 in the world.
Right. So think about where, I don't know where today your Facebook page is or my wife's Facebook page is, where they store that stuff. But there will come a time when this is built that the proximity will mean that all of your stuff is stored here because you're nearby. And so it just makes sense that all your stuff is here, and somebody who lives near one of the other centers, their stuff will be there. And so this geographic proximity stuff will make a difference.
Yeah.
So they will expand this over time. So they're going to build one now, and then as soon as this one's done, they'll build another 1 million square feet. And when that one's done, they'll build another 1 million square feet on about 300 acres of ground that we had in a prior year optioned.
Where's it at?
It's at, let's say, 370 and Highway 50. That
Okay,
area.
yeah, sure. Yeah.
So we went out and bought the property several years ago, actually a couple of years ago. 5 years ago when they came to us, they said, well, you don't have any ground available, so we're going to go somewhere else. 2 years later, we had shown them we had some ground available, and they said, yeah, but it's really not ready yet.
Not
we don't
developed.
know what the water and sewer and all that stuff is. 2 years after that, we came back to them and said, okay, we did everything you've told us to do. We've got the property tied up. Here's what it's going to take to get water and sewer, electric, gas, fiber, all that kind of stuff to it. Here's the grading plan. It's all ready to go. Boom, you tell us when you're ready to build. And they said, okay, now we're ready. And so it ended up being a project.
Well,
so,
and that relates to a lot of conversations we've had about the need to do that, just that kind of thing.
And we've talked about that our site development strategy says that we can't just sit and wait for someone to come here. We've got to actually prepare sites for projects to happen.
It's curious that you talk about data centers, being, this is a function of geographic need. It kind of goes back 50 years, 30, 40, 50 years ago to call centers.
Yeah.
Center of the United States.
Right,
So
absolutely.
it's interesting.
It all comes down to geography. I mean, even though we say that the internet is ubiquitous and you can locate anywhere you want to, we now learn that that's not the case. Lag time is important for people in this business.
Cell phones.
Yeah, I mean, so you start thinking about the technology, I'll call them limitations that we have, because you still have to run things through physical wires for the most part for data center stuff. That means that we're going to be a great location for some of this because we're in the center of the country.
Right.
And so that it's not the first data center we've got. It happens to be the biggest. I mean, Google across the river is bigger probably right now. In the long run, this one might end up being bigger than the Google project that's in Council Bluffs. So.
And it all is about economic development for the area. So
It
even
is.
Council Bluffs is a good thing for us, obviously.
And I'll tell you that one other big thing that made a difference here was OPPD. Facebook told us, look, we want to have a 100% renewable energy on this site. And so OPPD went out and acquired enough wind power for their whole system that they could essentially look to Facebook and say, look, we acquired all this, and so now you can with confidence say that we have the capacity to give you 100% renewable power. And they created a rate structure for this project and others like it that's very, very competitive. And so, they did a lot of work to make this happen. And so did Sarpy County and Cass County. We had 4 or 5, the city of Springfield, the city of Gretna. I mean, there were a lot of moving parts in this that we had to kind of bring together in some way, to get the ground tied up and to get the zoning worked out, et cetera. So it's a big project that'll be here for a long time to come.
And all done by 2020. It's a huge deal. Okay, I'm going to throw out Evolva, Novozymes, the Costco update, and the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, during which there were some real special activities going on, and you can talk about all that in the first quarter.
Sure. So the other projects you mentioned, Novozymes and Costco, Evolva, I think the name is.
I'm sorry, what did I say? Evolva?
I think you're right. Yeah, Evolva. So these are projects. Evolva and Novozymes are projects up in Blair that are essentially providing supplies and support to the Cargill campus up there. So Novozymes has been around for several years. They're making another big investment there, $36 million, I think. They produce enzymes that break down corn for ethanol. They also make enzymes for the laundry detergent industry and those kind of things, and so they're making all kinds of enzymes up there. And we're hoping that they're going to continue growing up there. They've already put $200 million in up there, and this is another $36 million investment, and hopefully they'll do another one. Evolva is another $60 million investment. That's another supplier up there for those companies. The Costco project probably is as unglamorous as Facebook is glamorous. This is the chicken processing facility we've been talking about all over the place. I mean,
depends on if you're in the chicken business
it all depends.
or not.
If you're in the chicken business, this is going to be a really elegant solution for what they want to do. So they'll build a $400 million worth of facilities. $280 million of it is the facility itself, where they will process about 3 million chickens a week. And they'll be growing all those chickens using the other $120 million, which will be investments in farms around Fremont, where farmers are now going to be growing chickens on a 15-year contract with Costco. So here's farmers who now grow primarily corn and soybeans are now going to have a steady stream of revenue coming in because they're going to be growing chickens. They're going to be buying feed from area farmers. They're going to be buying everything that they need to grow those chickens, and all the byproduct of the chickens will be able to be used for fertilizer and those kind of things. So there's this really interesting impact on the overall economy because of Costco.
Mm-hmm.
So that project is finally done. They'll start construction here in the next couple of months, and it'll be up and running in a couple of years. So great big project, lots of impact on the surrounding community, 1,100 jobs, paying $15, $16, $17 an hour. I mean, it's really good kind of project.
Yeah, I mean, not that there is an economic impact and benefit right now, but when these things are done, 2020 for what did we say for the Facebook thing, and then a couple of years for Costco, a different kind of impact at that point, right?
Oh yeah, the construction jobs right now. I mean, literally, there will be thousands of people working building these things for the next couple of years. And every project that we bring in, we have that great impact of immediate impact on the communities and people that are, everything from steel workers to people running grading machines to people doing drywall work. They're all being impacted positively by these projects. And then eventually, all the folks that are going to be working there then continue that economic impact on the community.
Right.
Yeah, so they're great projects for us.
Tell us about all the things you were doing during Berkshire Hathaway Week.
Yeah, this was a very strange year for Berkshire.
And how you came up with the idea to do that in conjunction.
Well, Berkshire has always been sort of like a Super Bowl, if you will, in economic terms. I mean, we're just fortunate that we're the city that gets picked for it every year. And so every year, at least in the last couple of years, 40,000 Berkeys come up to town, and they spend a lot of money, and they come to hear what's going on at Berkshire Hathaway, and they're here having a great time. Usually it's that first weekend in May. And so we've started over the years, the last 5 to 7 years, using the Berkshire Hathaway meeting as a reason for bringing clients here. It's amazing. You'd be surprised how many people have the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meeting on their bucket list. People that just want to experience it once or twice. And so we're able to say, well, why don't you guys come to town, and we will, you can participate by going to the Berkshire event, but we'll also, by the time you're here, do an investment seminar, engage you in some way in our community. So these last couple of years, we've primarily focused on international investors, mostly Chinese. And the last few years, we've had several hundred Chinese companies that were coming to Berkshire anyway, and we've been able to organize an effort with them. This year, we were even more focused on a combination of both foreign investors, domestic investors or companies that we want to talk to anyway, and startups. We happen to have all of this work happen in the same week. So that week was also startup week for us, which means that I can't believe we did this, 80 events and had 5,000 people through those events just for startup week alone.
Wow. 80 events?
80 events in 1 week, which was just mind-boggling. But some of them, as an events, they're an hour-long seminar
Sure.
for this or a 45-minute webinar for that, but things that we sponsor to help startups spend more of their time and energy thinking about growing their businesses. And a lot of people had come in for Berkshire so we could tap those folks to be speakers and those kind of things for us. And then we had at least one event that we organized, which were CEOs from Chinese companies that are members of the American Chamber of Commerce in China. And we partnered with AmCham to put a seminar on, and we had basically an entire day with companies that they felt had done foreign direct investment already in the States and had an interest in doing direct investment somewhere in the Midwest. And so we had a specific seminar in partnership with them.
Was that the Internet of Things? Is that what that one was?
No, and
that was a different one.
And then there was another thing we did also, which was a blockchain event. Blockchain is essentially the technology that you use on the internet to securely transfer financial information and money back and forth. It's relatively new in the larger world, but we wanted to start becoming this blockchain capital, if you will, or a blockchain center. And so we put on a blockchain conference, had 150 people in town. We called it New Kids on the Blockchain, and it was it was fun. And we had the MIT expert on blockchain was here, the Harvard Business School expert on blockchain was here, Walmart's blockchain expert was here, IBM's blockchain expert was here, and then we had Mutual and Union Pacific's blockchain experts on a panel, a series of panels that we had that day, people learning about how blockchain can help their businesses. So, so in 1 week we had all the Berkshire stuff we would normally do. We had the blockchain conference, and we had our startup collaborative had their startup week. It was a busy week, but boy, I think it really paid dividends for us long term.
Yeah, and in your business, you've got to be patient because we already talked about one example today of how, well, all the work that went into Facebook doesn't show anything for a while.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of these projects take forever. I mean, it's rare that we get a project in our door, say in February, and we close it in October.
Right.
I mean, usually you've got stuff carrying over year after year after year. It's nice to have those big ones and those fast ones, but it just doesn't happen all the time.
Anything else going on currently in projects, midtown, downtown?
We did kick off our Missouri River Commons project, which is the riverfront activation work. So remember the old Urban Land Institute discussion that said the three things need to happen: access to the river on both sides of the river need to be improved, some kind of development can occur that could foster some more activity there, and then we should be bringing more festivals and those kind of things to play. We're working on the activity piece of it. So how do we bring more festivals into play? So we hired a director of Missouri River Commons. Her name is Rachel Hellmeyer, and her job is to work really with the two parks departments in the two cities that pretty much own the property along the river.
How's that coming along?
It's going great. I mean, she's had a lot of projects that she's already working on. We've discarded a few because they aren't quite right, or we're moving some into the next year so we can actually spend enough time to make some things happen. So I think she's getting her feet wet, and I think she's being received pretty well so far.
Good. What do you see providing the most momentum going forward for the rest of the year?
Well, economic development has been a great year. We're going to do it. We'll have our first $2 billion year here this year. I mean, we've never done $1 billion before, and we did that with one project with Facebook. Add $400 million to that, and then we also did this first quarter. We landed 22 projects, about $120 million worth, and about 700 jobs, if I remember the numbers right.
721.
So yeah, so if you take those projects and add it to what we already know with Facebook and Costco, I mean that gets us to $1.6 billion, and we think we'll clear the $2 billion number this year. So that'll be a big year. We do $2 billion of our projects alone.
All this in despite of all the hurdles.
Absolutely. And so people can say we're still competitive, and I would say, yeah, for certain kind of projects we are. For the kind of projects that we think are going to make a difference in this place for the next 10, 20, or 30 years, we got work to do. And so if we're going to continue diversifying and growing our economy with high-paying jobs, that prosperity happens for everybody, it's time for us to make some changes. And so we'll keep working on it.
David, thanks.
My pleasure.
Good job, good work. And thank you for being with us again on Metro and More. Our goal is to better acquaint you with the mission, leadership, and the reach of the college. I'm Kent Pavelka for Metropolitan Community College. If you have comments or questions about the program, please email us at metrovision@mccneb.edu.
Thanks for watching.
This has been a MetroVision production produced by Metropolitan Community College.